Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Today I'm reviewing a book which has come to us from Sweet Maxwell. It's part of the Thomson Reuters organisation, and the publication is part of what is known as the Common Law Library of Titles, which are primary legal titles where the law is actually to be found in the substantive law areas. Now, the one book I'm looking at today, which I have reviewed before, is called Benjamin, or now Benjamin's Sale of Goods. It's now in a 10th edition, and it's been edited by a number of people, a lot of people involved in the work. The general editor is Professor M.G. Bridge. Now, the review we've written is on the web and in the journals, and Elizabeth, on this occasion, was the lead writer. I've, in fact, written a number of different reviews for previous editions for the Barrister magazine. Today's review, anyway, is called The Classic and Definitive Text on Sale of Goods, out now in a new 10th edition. The book came out towards the end of 2017, and I'm recording this book now at the beginning of 2018. And as I've said, there have been previous reviews which cover in some detail the work. Let's have a look at it. It's a hardback, and you can see it's a very heavy book, very much part of the Common Law Library series. You can see the title there, then all of the information there in the 10th edition. Now, the book itself is a very heavy book and very substantial. It runs to 2,600 odd pages. You can see the index at the back. The index is by paragraph numbering, and it's a very detailed index, which is to be expected from Sweet and Maxwell. And I can give you an idea of the amount of information in the index by just showing you how big it actually is. There it is there. That's the start of the index. It's called a legal taxonomy, and it's prepared using the Sweet and Maxwell structure. So do have a look at what they say about how the actual index itself works. And then after that, you've got a number of various bits and pieces. Right at the back is the Sale of Goods Act 1979. Now, if we go to the front of the book, you can see that there are copious footnotes throughout. Let's go to the front of the book next, and you can see the front page, which is here. There we go. You can see the front page there, and that is the list of the Common Law Library titles, many of which we have actually reviewed over the years. And you will find our reviews in the Barrister magazine and on the YouTube channel that I subscribe to. That's the information about the book itself and the ISBN. Then this is the general team of writers. And the team is led, as I say, by Michael Bridge as the general editor, and then you've got a series of people underneath who have contributed, some of whom are very well known in their own particular fields. Now, you can see here the history of Benjamin's book, going back to Victorian times, when it was actually known as Benjamin's Treatise on the Law of the Sale of Personal Property with reference to the French Code and Civil Law. The first edition came out in 1868, and then the new modern era, if you like, when the first edition of the new, what is called Benjamin's Sale of Goods, first appeared in 1974. Then you've got a preface which explains what's new for this edition, and it's a detailed preface as well, written by Professor Bridge. And then there's a photograph of the original author, whom I'm going to talk about because he had a very interesting career. And Professor Len Seeley has written the appreciation of Mr. Benjamin, and as I say, I'm going to refer to that in a minute. Then we've got the table of contents, which runs for quite a long period of time. There are a total of 8 parts in the book and 26 specific chapters, ending with conflict of laws. Then you've got a very substantial amount of case law. This is the authoritative work, and as I say, the case law citations are very substantial, running to a very large number. You can see the amount of the case law citations from that thickness there. Then you've got the table of statutes. Again, quite a large number of statutes. to cover everything. Then, of course, you've got the table of statutory instruments thereafter. You can see that there. And then after that, just moving on from that, there's the table of European legislation. This is something that appears now regularly in many publications, and irrespective of Brexit, it's going to be with us for a very long time, because it's part and parcel of what has happened in terms of our relationship with the European Union and Europe generally. Then there's international relevant information on the conventions. And then after that, there's some foreign legislation as well, because sale of goods, of course, is a global matter. Then we go to part 1. You see the structure. There's the page, and then you get into it. And what you have is a little mini index for each chapter, which I think is very helpful, because that it's very much the standard house style for the common law library, but you will see that you get the information. Then you've got paragraph numbering, which is at the side, you can see it there, and then you've got a lot of footnoting, which is the very great detail. As I said, it's a very heavy book, and it runs to 2,600 pages. And as I've indicated, there's a very large amount of information in this book. Now, what do we say about the new edition? Because anybody who's involved in this area of law will A, know about the book, and B, they will probably have their own copy. It's an expensive book, so it's not something that is cheap, and also it's not that readily available. You'd have to go to a law publishers to get hold of it. But we say this: what a distinguished and venerable work of reference is Benjamin's Sale of Goods, as well as bang up to date, thanks to the frequent appearance of new editions over the years. The publication of each new edition, at least since 1974, when the modern era took place, has been regarded as something of an event, and this latest, the 10th, is no exception. Despite the emergence of other works in this area of law, most would agree that Benjamin's is the key authority and the ultimate statement on the law of sale of goods, and of course there are useful commentaries throughout which the judiciary do take notice of. It's now published, of course, by Sweet and Maxwell under the part of its common law library series, and it impresses mightily with its formidable weight and bulk, as you've just seen, which of course reflects the dizzying pace of legal change over the decades. And yet, despite being almost 3,000 pages in length, that's when you include all the other bits at the front, which I haven't included because the total text is 2,600 pages. It's logically organised and reassuringly easy to use, and that, I think, is the key to a lot of the success of the common law library, because it is actually written in good English, so you can follow what is actually being said by the very eminent contributors. These are the people basically who know the law and they make the law, so that's really why this is such an important publication. Now, having noted all this, also note that Benjamin's has a pedigree dating back to 1868, when Phillip Benjamin published his well-known and immediately successful book on what was then called the Contract of Sale. This current edition reveals some diverting and positively startling biographical information on the checkered career of what was an extraordinary man who was born in the West Indies in 1811 to British parents. And it's interesting that Benjamin was called to the bar in 1866 at an unusually mature age by special dispensation following his admission as a student at Lincoln's Inn, the inn to which I'm a member. Now, and Elizabeth as well. And now for him, this was a new beginning and a courageous one, following a formerly illustrious career which ended in disaster. Please note the dates, 1866, because in his early youth, Benjamin's parents had moved to Charleston in South Carolina, the United States of America. It's the South. After a while, at the age of 14, he attended Yale College, which is now Yale University, which for whatever reason he left after 2 years without completing his degree. Nonetheless, he was able to enter the legal profession in New Orleans and was called to the bar in 1832. His life afterwards seemed to feature one success after another. He served in the state legislature in Louisiana, got married and was elected to the US Senate in 1852 and re-elected in 1857. establishing himself as an orator of eloquence and restraint. Preferring to stay in politics, he turned down an offer of a nomination to the US Supreme Court. Eventually, and unfortunately, and probably out of loyalty to the state of Louisiana, the South, he chose to support the losing side, i.e. the southern states during the American Civil War, acquiring the dubious honour of being remembered as the brains of the Confederacy after serving in several posts as Attorney General, Secretary of War, etc., under Jefferson Davis, old Jeff Davis. Now, after the surrender of General Robert E. Lee, Benjamin's property was confiscated and he found himself fleeing for his life in an open boat from which he was rescued by a British warship. And on arrival in England, he was virtually penniless. Not to be defeated, remember this is after the Civil War, he managed remarkably to extract several triumphs from previous disaster. And I have to say that this is an interesting story because it follows a pattern of quite a few people who've been advocates. Now, in 1872, he was appointed a Queen's Counsel, became a bencher of Lincoln's Inn in 1875, 2 years after the publication of the second edition of the book, which was known, as I say at the time, as Benjamin on Sale. Now, further details of Benjamin's eventful life are in this current edition by Professor Seeley. Certainly they enlighten and enliven its necessarily weightier subject matter, and we spent some time on it because it's an interesting story to see how the man formulated all of his knowledge over a very, very tumultuous period in American history. It's especially valuable, we think, then, are the commentaries which we now have in the modern era, which are regarded as indispensable, particularly for jurisprudence itself, for every student, practitioner and academic lawyer, and of course to the judiciary. Now, as sales of whatever kind are always at the core of commerce, there will always be a pressing and continuing need on the part of lawyers for this authoritative text. That's our view anyway. It features a wealth of new material, of course, for the new edition. This is the 10th edition. And all of which is, of course, detailed very conveniently in the preface, which you should really read, because that will give you an idea, especially with the blurb that comes with the book. But the preface itself will show you what is new for the 2017 edition. And it's fair to say that every professional library should contain a copy. Now, the law is endeavoured to be stated at the 30th of June 2017. I'm recording this at the beginning of 2018. I had the Christmas break and decided to do the recording now. There's the book again. There's the spine. It's a very heavy book. There are dividers in it, which is quite helpful. If you're looking for anything in particular, you can always use the dividers to actually find what you're looking for. I don't know what we've actually got in here for the divider itself, but we're looking really at breach of contractual terms. But you get an idea here of the structure. You will notice that there are very substantial and detailed footnotes. So you have to take quite a lot of care because there's a lot of detail and commentary in as well. Of course, there's a huge amount of quotation material from cases, Acts of Parliament and so on. Going on to damages for defective quality, you can see every single point that probably will arise from the case law and the statutes is covered by this new work. And it's a monumental achievement, I think, from the editorial board who comprise this particular publication. There it is, Benjamin's Sale of Goods, 10th edition. And as I say, I'm very proud that the common law has produced this type of publication because it is where the law is contained, and this is one of a number of books which Sweet and Maxwell produce on a regular basis with supplements, and they give us a tremendous service, and I can't thank them enough for the work that they do in producing this information and making it a bit easier for the practitioner to try to understand where we're going with this tremendous amount of legal material which is now available. Thank you anyway to everybody concerned. Bye-bye.